HR management functions. What do they do? What are the kind of things they have to think about? Obviously, strategy and planning. That's usually more at the higher levels. EEO at all levels. Staffing is probably the number one entry point into HR right now. I call them talent managers or talent acquisition managers, whatever. But there's a million firms. There's service firms that support larger firms. We'll get into this a little bit later when we get to the staffing section. But basically, like Microsoft would say, hey, look, we're paying $30 million a year for this HR function called staffing to go out and hire people. Why don't we contract it out with somebody else for $20 million a year and see what they can do? And so that creates, there's a demand, right? Where there's demand, supply will come. And so that creates a supply of these firms that people go to, and they do, in effect, headhunting, and they do high-end recruiting, and they do really well. Which you have a lot of students that go there, and they crush it. So staffing, anyway, great entry-level area. Talent management and development, let's think about like careers, succession plan within the organization, vertical growth, rewards. One of our guys just went on, she's a compensation analyst right now, so that's this thing called total rewards, right? So it's your base pay, it's your variable pay, it's your commission, it's your bonus structure, it's executive compensation, it's stock options, and anyway, we'll get into that as well. Risk management, worker protection. Larger firms will have dedicated safety people. You might be a safety and health professional or aspiring in this class right now. You guys will get hired usually at larger firms, but in mid-size and smaller firms, that all kind of falls on the HR person's lap. L&I, and anyway, you get the drill. We're going to go there as we go through. And of course, union relations. A union will create a collective bargaining agreement between the employees, union, and the organization. And usually it's an HR person that negotiates that does the analysis, that figures out what we can give, what we're not going to give. So they are, in effect, the management side. And I try to be balanced, but basically the management side in those situations. All right, let's keep going. 3 roles. This one's going to be really important for some of our assignments. So actually, let me go to the next slide, then I'll come back. In the past, HR has evolved incredibly over the past 30 years. I'd say even since I worked in HR, it was talked about then, but it's even more so now. And that is where it used to be primarily, not exclusively, but primarily an administrative role. That means if there's a problem with payroll, you fix it. Somebody wants to change their benefits, you fix it. Hiring, applications, interview questions, I mean, stuff like that. Orientation of employees, onboarding is what we call it. That all fall on an HR person. Most of that has either been automated through technology, much of it has been outsourced to other organizations, like I mentioned earlier with Microsoft. So today that's much smaller, but the expectation of an HR person is that they can create administrative systems to do a much larger statement of work. So it's not like the work has gone away, but it's been made efficient through technology and through best practices. So much less administrative work in the HR field than it used to be. And now it's basically administrative expertise. You build a dashboard, you build a set of metrics, you build a scorecard to predict how well your organization is doing. You don't go file paperwork anymore. The middle one here, you can see operational or employee advocate role. The idea here is that you've got your biggest expense, which is obviously employees, right? Well, there's a couple industries that's an exception, but almost in every industry, your biggest expense is your payroll. And so you say, we're actually going to dedicate someone to take care of that largest expense. If there's a problem, everything, in this category, everything falls on your desk. I've had people walk in my office say, my marriage is falling apart, I'm going to quit my job. And you go, okay, well, would you like some time off? Or we'll pay for marriage counseling. Or like, how can we keep you here because we think you're really awesome? If you got to go, you got to go. Respect that. There are bigger things than work. But what can we do? Basically, how can we support? I remember when we did a bunch of big mass layoffs at Boeing, a big part of the kind of the back end of that was retraining, helping people look for jobs. People have been at the company for 15 years. Like, I don't know how to apply for a job, helping people through that. So that's kind of the employee advocate side. The operational side is, can you stand and deliver in your job? One of the unique things about HR as a field is if you are an accountant and you're a junior accountant and you get hired, you're mainly going to hang out with junior accountants, or an engineer with junior engineers. There isn't really junior HR people. HR people exist to make the company go better, which means I was 20 years old. I went to work at Boeing and I'm at a table. I remember this vividly. I'm at a table and every person at that table had been an executive, not a manager, an executive for more years than I had been alive. And we're sitting there at this table, and I can barely spell HR at this point, and I think Boeing makes airplanes. I'm not really sure. And they're like, hey, James, what are your thoughts on X, whatever it is, a union contract, a grievance, whatever it is. At that point, I mean, your credibility is on the line. You have to be able to stand and deliver and do so in an intelligent way. Otherwise, there's someone ready to take your place. So that's kind of the operational side. That in the past is pretty much like it is now, maybe at a different level, but in terms of amount of work that an HR person does, it's similar. The massive change is the top one, kind of the strategic model. So whereas maybe 20 years ago, you would have, in a big company, you have a team of maybe 10 or 20 HR people. The only person who would interface with executives would be your HR director. The only person who would think strategically, who would think 10 years, 20 years, who would think systems and processes would have been your HR director. Now it's a demand of pretty much every level of HR. So you can see it's kind of reflected in the graph there. In the past, a small part of the work. Now it's a huge part of the job. You can't not be strategic or intentional, whatever word you kind of want to put by that. But one of the things that I take away from it is, and I think I might even bring this up a little bit later, is there's a premise, or what's the word? A heuristic in HR that says you can't serve a business until you learn a business. You can't serve a business until you learn it, till you know how it operates, the formal structure, the informal structure, its history, its present, its future. And until you figure that out, you're not going to be of much use. I had a mentor tell me there are two types of HR people. They're the types that do their job, they never get promoted, and they never move. And there's the type of HR person who learns the business. They learn accounting, even though they're in HR. They read the financial reports, and they read the prospectus, and they listen to the news, and they listen to, and they learn what's happening. Like, what do we do here, and how does it work? They begin to speak that language, and they end up taking over the world, at least the HR world anyway. Just kind of how it should be, because they have the platform and the credibility to be able to solve real problems. So anyway, that's what you might call like the HR transition, transitioning from more to less administrative work and from less to more strategic work. Quick comment on organizational culture. In many ways, organizational culture is driven by who you hire and how you socialize them. Part of that is how you pay them. All those things, of course, fall into the HR discipline, so they have a big footprint on what organizational culture looks like. And with legislative changes, there's certainly a focus on creating an ethical culture. Now, there's several studies over the past decade that says, hey, if your company is perceived more ethically, better for your stock price, better for your earnings per share, more people are interested in you, they want to do business with you. That is a matter of trust, and that's fine. I mean, it's a good thing. But this is a really messy reality when it lands on your desk. Just take this for a minute, okay? An individual has their own set of ethics, and it's going to be driven by their parents, like kind of how they grew up, their religion, their whatever, what they were disciplined for, what they were encouraged in, sports teams, whatever it is. They say this is right and this is wrong in a particular context. That's an individual. That's a pretty complex situation about what is and isn't ethical. Now I want you to take that person and then add 99 people just like them, and now they're your work group. And you just, I'm pointing, you decide as the HR person what's ethical, what's okay. So you write your policies and you come out and okay, this is the appropriate ethical standard. Says who? Well, says you. Well, you're one of 100. What makes your idea carry weight, carry authority? Just because of your job title? So this is really, really, really messy. Do we want ethical organizations? Of course. Is it important? Of course. How do we do that? There's the what and there's the how. The what is really clear. How you do this, gets pretty complex. There's one heuristic that looks like this. What's the legal question here? Does this meet like all of our rules, laws, state, federal, etc.? And then the next question is the ethical question. Some people try to wrap it up into something. Hey, if your mom read whatever you did right now, if your mom read about it in the newspaper tomorrow morning, would you be okay with that? I think like, well, I don't know. There's a lot of moms that have a lot of variants out there. I'm not sure that's really crystal clear. So I'm not gonna throw out a pass on this or say here's the easy way to do it, because there isn't an easy way to do it. No decision, no action in terms of kind of a code of conduct or a code of ethics is a decision. It's just a really crappy decision. So you have to form your culture, including an aspect of ethics. You have to be clear about it. Post it, says what we will tolerate, what we won't tolerate, but just know that it's going to affect many parts of your business. I had a story I might get to later. This guy who was from Turkey, and he was absolutely brilliant engineer, worked in airplane systems, and he just made a dumb move. To him, it wasn't a dumb move. To him, it was a funny move. Matter of fact, he thought it was hilarious. And we're over there just going, man, we come from kind of two different cultures. So you want to be multicultural, right? You want to be open to different perspectives. And at the same time, in this case, it was basically one person offending another. We're like, well, that person's got a kind of a right to be able to come to work without getting harassed. And it was, so anyway, bottom line is there, it's messy. Do your best. And you get my phone number. Something comes up. Okay, legislation regarding ethics. Sarbanes-Oxley is one of many. It's the only one I'm going to talk about here. This was passed having to do with some abuses by executives. So here's the big idea behind Sarbanes-Oxley. Establish an ethics code. What do you stand for? If you don't know what that is, you can go to the HRM website. There'll be some templates that you can work with. Number two, develop employee complaint systems. So if I work for the CEO and I think the CEO is doing some things unethical, Sarbanes-Oxley says you have to provide a platform for me to be able to point it out, to be a whistleblower, and then it's illegal for you to take action back against me. Built into the law to protect people and encourage them to be honest. HR competencies, we've gone through this a little bit, so I'm going to move on. This is a big hairy slide. I don't want you to freak out over it. I'm not going to test you on it. I'll just say this. There is an established body of knowledge. They call it the HRM BOK, B-O-K. Society of Human Resource Management, body of competency and knowledge. So if you're an HR major, if you want to go to the HR graduate program, it's good to be aware like this is out there. I'm not gonna grill you on it. But part of this, I guess, maybe a comment would be when I was getting my PhD in management, I would tell people that, you know, because I came back to Boeing. I was like, oh, here's where I'm at. Here's what I'm doing. They go, you get a PhD in management? I'm like, apparently so. You know, I'm doing it. And a lot of people said, isn't management just common sense? And I found an interesting consistency between everybody who said that. They weren't managers. And managers were like, whoa, that's a big, hairy topic. You're like, yeah, it's pretty complex. Management is not common sense. I wish it was, or either that or common sense isn't very, very common. But this is kind of the body of knowledge, or this is what an HR person should be able to do. Different areas of expertise that you have. You can see both behavioral competencies and technical competencies. They go together. So anyway, I won't test you on it, but yeah, I want you to know that it is a bounded body of knowledge. It's not just go out there and find some HR stuff. There's very specific things that coalesce into professional certification, which we'll deal with. I want to do that right now with professional certification. So there are several. You may have seen PHR after somebody's name, or SPHR. The one that's growing probably the fastest, PHR, you'll see most common in a few years. That'll probably be different. It'll be this one, SHRM CP. That just means Society of Human Resource Management Certified Professional. Think of this like after a lawyer, after a professor, you might see PhD. They have a terminal degree. They should know their stuff. A lawyer, you see JD, Juris Doctorate. They should know their stuff. After an accountant, you see CPA, Certified Public Accountant. Again, it's just this certification that says they actually know or at least they've proven at some point in their career, maybe they forgot, but at some point in their career, they've proven that they know what they're talking about. And it's a professional standard that pretty much everybody recognizes. We actually have a lot of students when they graduate, before they graduate in their senior year, take the SHRM CP. Excellent thing to walk out of here with. Okay, last thing on this. Again, just an orientation to HR. A little longer than I thought. I was shooting for 15 minutes, but that's okay. Last thing is there's three main jobs when it comes to HR people. There is an HR generalist, which was my first job. Super fun. You've no idea what's going to land in your office that day. You could be making financial projections for a union contract 1 minute, and the next minute somebody got to fight in the parking lot, and you're talking with the police and doing employee discipline. I mean, you just never know. So that's a really, really fun job. An HR specialist is someone who kind of narrows it down to say, this is my one baby. So you're excellent at benefits and understanding contracts with medical providers, or you're excellent in hiring. You can sniff out good talent and kind of like a hound, you can go find them. Or whatever it is, your particular area of expertise. An HR specialist has a more narrow role. The third one, it's not listed here, but that's okay, is this HR manager. An HR manager is somebody who manages generalists and specialists. So that's it. I know that was a little longer than I thought, but shorter than the 8 hours we could have done, so that's okay. But hopefully that helps just in terms of kind of an overview of what does an HR person do, what do they need to be good at, what are the jobs they take, stuff like that. So that's it for chapter 1.